Okay, welcome to the show. We have Mr. Goose Gossage in the house. How you doing today, Goose?
Very well, thanks. Quite a party last night, and great to be here.
Thanks for being here. And you currently live in Sea Springs. I know you're from Colorado. Is Colorado Springs your birth town as well?
Yeah, my family, man, I was born and raised in Colorado. My family goes back there to the late 1800s.
Oh wow.
Uh, and so we're an old family, and I've seen a lot of changes come to Colorado when it was wide open and pretty much just, I mean, wild. And my dad should have been born 100 years. He was born 100 years too late. He would have been a great mountain man, and I grew up in his shadow. So I had a great childhood. Baseball was a big part of my life, and Colorado Springs in Colorado is a fabulous place to live.
Awesome. Was the sport always baseball, or were you a multi-sport athlete growing
No,
up?
I played all three sports. Basketball, God, I loved basketball. I wouldn't have made any money playing it, but it was a great. I loved it. The fast paced, knocking people around, but pitching. When I was on the mound, there was nothing better than I was put on earth to throw things. We used to get in rock fights. I grew up in a kind of a tough Italian neighborhood, and the rock fights didn't last very long because their rocks were falling short, and I was still heaving them in on their heads. So the rock fights didn't last
When,
too long.
when did you discover that pitching was your thing?
Well, like I said, I was put on earth to. I was throwing rocks. I was constantly throwing something all the
So it
time,
was always it was
and I
always a
was
part of you.
and I had a great arm, and I would take in basketball. I would take the ball out of bounds, and everybody'd head for the bucket on the other end, and I'd hit them with long passes. That was one of our plays,
Yep.
and and no one had an arm like mine, so.
Did the arm work in football as well?
I I I was asked. The only reason that I didn't play football was because hunting season was at that time. But I did play some football early on, and then I told the coach. I said, "Hey, coach, I can't make the first game." That was C squad before we went into high school, and I said, "Coach, I can't make the game this weekend." He says, "You better have a good excuse." And he said, "What is it?" I said, "I'm going hunting." I thought his head was going to explode when I told him it was our first game. Well, that was the end of my football career, but that was kind of a blessing in disguise because I didn't have any lingering injuries from football. I know a lot of guys. I know a kid that was 6'6", had a God, had a great future in pitching, and he's a farm kid and got upended and dislocated his shoulder. That was the end of his pitching. So, I didn't have any lingering stuff, and I say I was put on earth to be a pitcher.
Love it. And then, so you discovered that talent early. When did coaches say, Goose, you're going to go places? Like, let's get you on that path.
There really wasn't anybody that I could talk to that had any experience in professional ball, any good experience. No one had ever made it from Colorado Springs. They got a cup of coffee in the minor leagues, and it didn't last very long. And so when I started, I thought maybe there was a possibility. I had scholarships all over the country to big schools, small schools. Some of them I was going to play smaller schools. I was going to play some basketball too. So I was looking
Wow.
forward to, for getting an education. I didn't know if I had Mickey Mantle. Oh my God, that guy. They were on such pedestals that I can't. I'm going to start out maybe on a journey in professional ball to get these guys out that, they don't put their pants on the same way as I do. So, that was very intimidating. And then the day came when I came running in the house. I graduated 2 days before. Came running in the house, and my dad had passed away when I was a junior in high school. And this is upon graduating out of high school. And I came in the house and I said, Mom, I got a job coaching the kids at the park that I grew up playing my youth baseball. And I'd ride my bike up there every day throughout my youth and play baseball at this park, at our local park. And she goes, well, Rick, she says, this gentleman has a job for you too. And I'd run right past him on the couch. And he was a scout from the Chicago White Sox and informed me right then and there that, I got this opportunity to play professional baseball. And they offered me 5,000 and I held out for 8, and the rest is history. And, when I started out, all I wanted to do was put a big league uniform on one time, and that was the biggest decision that I'd ever made in my life. And I'd never been on an airplane. I'd never been out of the state of Colorado.
Oh, wow.
So this was quite, and now I'm going to go try this journey to get guys out like Henry Aaron and Mickey Mantle, my idol, that I idolized, that I had on such a pedestal that, like I said before, they didn't put their pants on the same way as we did. And it just seemed impossible that I would be trying to get to the major leagues. My family were huge Yankee fans. There was 17 years difference between me and my oldest sibling. I was a mistake. And now I have a younger sister. My mom said, oh, he can't be back here all by himself. So I have a younger sister. But it was a childhood where baseball in Colorado, it's not very conducive for baseball. It's a short season. And now I signed this contract, and I cried all day of what have I done, signed my life away. I wanted to further my education. No one had ever done that in my family. And I wanted to further my education, and it was going to be paid for with the scholarships, and I signed that contract, and I cried all day.
Really?
Thinking, what have I done? And at the end of that day, I borrowed my brother's Jeep and went up to one of my dad's and my favorite places where we hiked and hunted and in the foothills of the Rockies, and sat there and cried under a ponderosa pine all day long, all afternoon. And at the end of the day, it was getting dark, and I said, I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but there aren't going to be any shoulda, woulda, couldas, if, ands, or buts. I'm going to give it my best shot. The only thing that's going to keep me from attaining what I want to attain in the big leagues or playing to make it to the big leagues is I'm just not good enough, and I can live with that if I give it my best shot. And the tears stopped flowing, and bring it on, so the rest is kind of history. Sitting under that, once I'd made that, the tears stopped, and I made that commitment and started on my journey. Got on my first plane flight in 2 days and headed to Sarasota, Florida, the Gulf Coast Rookie League, which is the lowest classification of professional baseball. And I was there 2 weeks, and they sent me up to A-ball, and my worst fears became reality. I got my ass kicked. And the harder I threw it, those kids were just that much better.
What were you throwing back then?
I don't know. We didn't have guns.
Got it.
I threw hard, and I could command my fastball.
Were you always viewed as a really hard thrower, like from the onset, just that speed?
Oh, yeah. Even in Little League, I was known that me and another kid were known as the hardest throwers around, so, yeah, speed was always, I could always throw a ball through a car wash without getting wet.
That's awesome. And then the role of a closer was ultimately defined by you, from what I understand. Am I understanding that right or no?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean, but
okay,
I was at the, this is how, when I broke in 1972, you did not want to be in the bullpen. You wanted to be a starter. A bullpen was a junk pile where old starters went that couldn't go 9 innings anymore. That's what the bullpen consisted of. And I made the club in 1972 as a non-roster player, was sent back to A-ball after my worst fears became reality. The following year, that manager wanted to release me. That's what a fine line is between success and failure.
Okay, so I want to hit on that. So
yeah.
when you get your contract, you went to play basically development league, rookie league.
Right.
So go through all those steps.
Yeah.
Like that's step one, and then how do you get into the majors from there?
So that first year when I was sent to the Gulf Coast Rookie League and then sent up after 2 weeks to A ball, which
So,
is a higher classification
but
of ball.
but is that the next step up than A ball from there? Is there
That would be the next step
okay?
up, and it was high A. And these kids had experience in college, higher draft choices, some high draft choices. It was a good league. And that's where they sent me, and I got my ass kicked. The harder I threw it, the harder they hit it. I had no off-speed pitch. And so the following year, first full season of spring training, I report to the minor leagues, and Johnny Sane and Chuck Tanner, I throw batting practice over at the big league camp one day, and I opened some eyes. And Chuck Tanner, the more those guys got on me, they used to take a van. This is a long story, but it's really instrumental in how you open eyes. So back up. I get sent back. Now we have a minor league complex, and when the big league camp needed guys to throw BP, we would go over and get our work in, throwing batting practice to the big leaguers. Well, my God, I'm throwing batting practice to the White Sox big leaguers at big league camp, right? They take me over in one of the vans, and I'm throwing hard, and I don't know anything else. I can't lob a baseball. All I can do is, and I had such a great arm that I'd never thrown batting practice like this. And I am like the seventh game of the World Series, and I'm trying to lay it in there, and these guys are screaming at me. They haven't gotten the ball out of the cage yet, and it's kind of embarrassing to them that I'm doing this, but they're screaming at me and MFing me and telling me, "You rookie fucker," and all this shit, and I'm like, "Get me off of this mound. I can't wait to get off this mound." When I got done with my BP, they still hadn't gotten the ball out of the infield. The more they got on me, the harder I threw, and it pissed me off. Instead of going into a hole or backing off, I put the pedal to the metal, man, and I'm letting this thing go, and I'm MFing them in my own mind, So my time is up. I ran off that mound, and the vans are in a parking lot through the dugout. This is minor leagues. This is in spring training, and I ran off that mound, and I hear this. I'm headed to the van. I can't wait to get my ass in that van, and I'm not saying hi to nothing to anybody. I can't wait to get the hell out of here. And Chuck Tanner, I hear this, "Young man," and I stopped and I looked, and here's Tanner chasing after me. He said, "That was one of the greatest exhibitions I've ever seen." He goes, "F those guys." And it was, wow, I got that confirmation from the manager. The following year, now, Johnny Sane, that's where I opened eyes. Johnny Sane, my second or third game, I'm 1-1 maybe in the minor leagues. This is very important in my development. I'm 1-1. I'm down in Quad Cities. The White Sox have a off day in Chicago Monday. I got an off day. I'm throwing a side day in Moline, Illinois, right? Minor leagues. Back to A ball at the Midwest League. They sent me back there after spring training was over. And so Sane sends Tanner down to teach me this straight changeup, the mechanics of it. That's how simple it was. That's how Johnny Sane. I say when I got to the big leagues, the stars were aligned. It was incredible, the coaching that I got. Dick Allen, the greatest player I would ever see, took me under his wing and taught me how to pitch location and pitch selection, what he's looking at from a hitter's standpoint. Johnny Sane, I could throw through a car wash without getting wet, but I had no idea what an off-speed pitch was. And he's going to show Chuck Tanner this changeup, and they take a puddle jumper on their day off in Chicago, and Roland Heeman, the general manager, and Chuck Tanner came down, showed me this changeup. I ended up being the MVP of the league with that changeup. I was 18-2. The following year, now to fast forward, I get invited to camp as a non-roster player, and I make the team out of A-ball. Now, this is how closer, okay? Now, this is the evolution of the bullpen. I make the team, right? Early on, the first week of the season, Chuck Tanner and Johnny Saint call us into the office in Comiskey Park. And he said, sit down. To me and Terry Forrester, a hard thrower, had the greatest stuff I ever saw a pitcher have. He said, sit down. So we sit down, and he says, we're going to tell you how we're going to use you. These starters get in trouble. It's going to be you guys. You're going to be coming into those games and facing inherited runners, come into jams. They said, just be ready, okay? That was the evolution of the bullpen, where it started to become more specialized. That was 1972, okay? Now, closer wasn't, we were relief pitchers. Starters still prided themselves on going 9 innings. That's a thing of the past. Now, I'm coming into ball games with that starter in trouble, maybe in the 6th inning, 7th inning, with the game in the balance. Now, it was baptism under fire. That's what it was, and we were thrown.
Nobody else was doing this strategy.
No, nobody was doing this, and maybe Raleigh Fingers was at the forefront of that too. Dick Williams, those great teams with Oakland. That was the first great reliever I ever saw, was Raleigh Fingers. That's who, man, I thought, man, I'd love to be Raleigh Fingers, you know, and do the job that he's doing. And he was coming in the same, he couldn't start. He couldn't go 9 innings. He'd get the 4 days off killed him. I loved the opportunity of coming to the ballpark with that opportunity to pitch in a big game. I hated 4 days off in between starts. I became to love the bullpen. And coming to the park every day and pitching, having that opportunity to be in a big situation with the game on the line, that kind of started to define who I was.
And then when did other teams start catching on to the same strategy?
Not really the evolution started, but still starters for a long time still prided themselves on finishing what they started. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel great about being part of that evolution of the specialization. Now it's gone, that pendulum has gone from in the middle kind of to all the way to one side. You got one guy, a closer.
Right.
I resent being called a closer. I'm not a closer. I was a relief pitcher. I didn't pitch one goddamn inning, you know. And what Mariano did, hey, God bless Mariano, man. He's a great guy, and he was a hell of a pitcher. He had a hell of a career. But to compare what I used to do, do what I did, those 310 saves, his 650 are bogus. And the 310 saves, let me tell you something. I had to get over disasters. I'd come to the ballpark with a potential disaster that night, coming in and getting out of a jam, and then having to pitch 2 more innings or 3 more innings. That was regular. You know, I put on all those 1,502 strikeouts of mine. Big strikeouts in big situations. I mean, I couldn't, there were situations that I couldn't even allow the ball to be put in play, or we had a tie game, or the game was, or they were ahead. So where I shined was where I could strike guys out in big situations, and I could locate my fastball, and Dick Allen taught me that, how to pitch up and in, on the plate, up. Oh my God.
That's
I
awesome.
can tell Aaron Judge.
I love the passion.
I can tell Aaron Judge, hey, Aaron, time out, and 50,000 people at Yankee Stadium. I'm going to throw you 3 heaters right here, okay, right here, and you're going to go sit down, okay?
So
that's it.
That's awesome. So this is incredible, and I'm glad the Mariano Rivera situation popped up, because you're right. you define the relief position, and then he's getting all the credit for being a closer, but it's a 1 inning close versus a true relief save situation.
I call it apples and oranges.
Yeah, no doubt.
What I did and he did, and you know what's interesting? I say this: he's the greatest 1 inning pitcher. He was the only player to ever go into the Hall of Fame unanimously. Got every vote. All the greats before him, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, nobody got a 100% of the vote.
Yeah.
He's the only one. He's the greatest 1 inning pitcher of all time. That's what I call him. The greatest 1 inning pitcher of all time. Yeah. Do what I did. I was a workhorse. We were workhorses. Starters still prided themselves. What they've done to pitching is, they're rolling over in their graves. All the great baseball men that started this for 100 years, that torch was passed. None of us in that room that I go to in the Hall of Fame, none of those guys in that room invented the game, right?
Right. And Hall of
And
Fame.
for 100 years, that torch was passed. That torch has stopped being passed.
And then talking about the Hall of Fame inductee in 2008. Is that right?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that process. Like, what's the buildup? Just tell us the story there.
You know, it took me 9 tries to get in. And here's another thing back to the point of they forgot what we used to do. It took me 9 years to get into the Hall of Fame, or eight tries. I'm on my 9th try, and I said, these guys are so dominant in that 1 inning role. They forgot what we used to do. They forgot what starters used to do. Look at the change in the game, how it's changed. And Mariano's a perfect. I'm not knocking Mariano. Mariano's a sweetheart, and he's one of the nicest people you'll ever want to meet in your life. But let's call a spade a spade. It's not right. It's wrong. They've fallen all over themselves in these 1 inning guys because they're so dumb. If I'd have pitched one, somebody said, what if you'd have pitched just 1 inning? I said, I might still be pitching. I'm 73 goddamn years old. I might still be pitching. No, joke. But that's the huge difference. You know, I was going to say, when we were thrown to the wolves, I'd come into tonight's game and a potential disaster every night. I walked that tightrope.
And I wanted to ask you, so, you know, the way you got brought up, you wanted to control the whole game, I'm assuming, like everybody else. You didn't want to get taken off the mound. You wanted to finish your game, right? The first time you were told about this strategy, hey, I want you to work the bullpen, I want to bring you into these troublesome situations, I want to know, what was your initial reaction to that? Were you like, you're crazy, I'm not doing this? Were you pissed off, or how did you react to that?
Bring it on.
Oh, you lived it from the very beginning.
Bring it on. It was my job. That's what they told me I'm going to do. I didn't have a choice. Chuck Tanner said, when these starters get in trouble, it's going to be your asses. That's what he said.
And then after that started, did you ever have the starter role again, where you played after the 4 days off?
Yeah, I didn't get that starting role 1976. Now fast forward, that's 72 when we were thrown to the baptism under fire, as I call it. You know.
So you were still relieving, but you were still starting.
Yeah. So I had just come into my own in 1975. I won the Fireman of the Year, and 1976 they called me in the off season. Paul Richards was our manager, still with the White Sox. 1976, and they said, "Hey Goose, we don't have any starters. We don't have any arms. Would you start?" I said, "Sure." After being a reliever for 5 years now, right? 4 years, and I said, sure, I'll do whatever you guys want me to do. So I went back into the rotation. I ended up being 9-17. I had 14 or 15 complete games. Lost a lot of tough games, 1-3-2, 3-1. I did a great job as a starter. Logged a lot of tough innings, went complete games, 14 complete games, 15. That's unheard of today. And I hadn't started in 5 years, 4 years.
Was it
So
tough to get back into that rotation or not
no,
really?
no, just bring it on.
Par for the
You know,
course.
I was a workhorse. I said, I'll do whatever you guys want me to do. And that was my job, and so being thrown to the wolves, one of the biggest things, I come into tonight's potential, this is what I faced. I come into tonight's potential disaster, walking that tightrope, getting out of a jam, and then having to finish the game, whichever 3 innings, 2 innings, 2 2/3 innings, whatever it was. I would come into that game and I lose that game tonight, right? I shit the bed in front of 50,000 people. I call it shit in the bed.
Sure.
In front of 50,000 people. Now, I grind on that all the way home that night, right? On that loss that I gave it up. I'm a young kid. I'm out of A-ball, right? I grind on that loss because I lost that game in front of 50,000 people at Comiskey Park or wherever we are. I go to bed that night with a sick pit in my stomach. I wake up thinking, water under the bridge, it's over, game over. Turn the page, all the cliches that go with the bullshit.
Sure.
And it's bullshit. And I can bullshit myself all I want to, but reality is reality. My eyes opened that morning after going to bed with that sick pit, closing my eyes that night before, and I got a sick pit. I wake up, my eyes open. That sick pit has not gone anywhere. It's there. And everybody knows that's competed knows what that's like. Even little leaguers know what that's like, right? So all day I grind to turn the page. It's over. Tonight's a new game. I'll be back in that same situation maybe tonight, right? Throwing back to the wolves after losing that game and grinding on it all since I come out of that ball game and lose it, right? Now tonight, I'm coming into tonight's potential disaster after shitting the bed last night, right? Wow. It's there. It's the elephant in the room. I don't care how much you bullshit yourself. It's reality. And it sets in, and this little guy's talking shit on your shoulder. Don't shit the bed like you did last night. Don't screw it up like you did last night. Blah, blah, blah. On and on. Get out of just turn the page. It's a new night. It's a new game. It's a different game. It's a different day. All the water under the bridge, all the cliches that you can throw at it, right? But it's there. Now, because it's there, I got 2 shit the beds going. I lose this ball game. Now, reality really sets in, and it says to me, I better figure these disasters out, or I'm going to be back in Colorado doing something else real soon. And that's what you have to deal with. And the mental part of it is what's not being taught today. These guys that are running the game, if it doesn't come out of that stupid-ass computer, they wouldn't know. They couldn't pick a baseball out of a lineup of sports balls, these jerks that are running this game and ruining it to the point of I don't even recognize it. That torch that I talked about earlier has stopped being passed. It's like they cut my heart out. They don't want my knowledge. And you know what? That's very alarming because it's all knowledge. All those coaches, the coaching that I got in the minor leagues when I hit professional baseball out of high school was incredible. I was a fantastic student. I was hungry for knowledge. All I wanted to do when I started out was put a big league uniform on one time, and it turns into 22 years. That's how careers start. One pitch at a time.
Love it. So talk to me about this, and I love the passion. I love the fire. I'm feeling it. How did you take that guy on your shoulder that's just giving you all the cliches and everything else, and you're dealing with a disaster? You're in that second disaster. You don't see how I'm going to get out of this inning. I don't see how I'm going to be able to close out this game and get us a W on the scoreboard. How did you last 22 years in the league and dealing with all this negativity and still coming out of it? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Because that's not easy, but you did something to be able to get out of that shit sandwich that you were in and we're actually able to turn it into a superpower to come out triumphantly. So what did you do to develop that skill set, that mentality, that heart, that fury, that courage to be able to have this long-lasting Hall of Fame career?
I always had that courage. I always had that, don't go into a show, you come out. You know, like those guys MFing me during that batting practice session. That was so huge.
But it seems like you like it.
But
like,
well, you either like it or you climb into a hole.
Yeah.
And dealing with failure, because baseball is a game of failure. How you deal with failure, absolutely. If I came to those crossroads of figuring out, look, I got two shit the beds going. How do I handle this? If I don't get a handle on these, I'm going to be home doing something else. It was that stark in my mind.
But how do you get the brain? Because if you get in your head, you're dead.
So here it is. It's a process. It's not a one-time thing. It is a process that you work on, and you either get it or you don't. I found the same analogies in golf that are in baseball. You figure it out. There's 50 guys on tour that figure everything out that there is to figure out, and baseball's the same goddamn way. There's a lot to figure out. How you feel, how you deal with this, with failure. And what else can you fail at 7 out of 10 times and be a star in baseball? Somebody else, the only other answer to that is a weatherman that I've heard. Yeah. And that's it. It's a game of failure. 50 top golfers in the world, and then there's 10,000 chasing them. But baseball's the same analogy.
Okay, so tell me this, just so I can understand some of the substance. I know what you're saying. So let's say that you have 2 games, you have 2 L's, you have 2 losses, you couldn't get out of it. You're back on the mound in a pretty bad situation. You're down 3 rounds, you take the mound. What did Goose do back then to say, screw it, I lost those two games, I'm here now? Like, did you do anything specific to clear the mechanism, to clear the brain, or how did that work? Or was it just, I'm just here, I'm just going for it? Like, tell me what was going on in your mind.
Once you fail so many times, and it is a process, as I say, it doesn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight. Sometimes that pressure of me going to the mound night after night with the game on the line, in that process, I would be shaking and wondering how I'm going to even put one foot in front of the other. And I said, why did I had this exact conversation with myself. And this is the process that it takes. It's not a one night thing. It's not a year thing. It may take you a couple of years to get it took me 6 years. I faced the biggest game in my life with the Yankees in '78 with the playoff game against Boston, right? You couldn't write a better scenario with the Yankees, Red Sox tied, and we go into Fenway Park for the biggest game of my life, one of the biggest games ever played in baseball. Red Sox, Yankees. I've never faced that kind of pressure in my life. If I hadn't had those 5 years or 6 years under my belt before I did that, I don't think I really would have survived that. But backing up to about what I was saying about putting that cumulative pressure, that night after night, walking into that situation and facing game on the line, 50,000 people, shit the bed twice, like you said. Wow, how do I deal with this? Okay. I said, why am I shaking, putting one foot in front of the other? I'm coming to the mound. I'm shaking. I'm literally shaking. The nerves are, and this is cumulative. It didn't happen all the time. It was just weird how this happened, and this pressure, all of a sudden it would get to you. And I said, why am I shaking? I've never shaken. Even in my Little League, I go back to Little League. Why did I start playing this game at the age of 8? For the love and the fun of it. Bam. I went, wow, for the love and the fun of it. Wow, isn't that a new concept? Perspective. I stopped shaking. I said, I started playing this game for the love and the fun of it at 8. I went back to being freaking 8. It was weird. It was how I put this in perspective about how important I know this is important. Jesus, 50,000 people, my fans, my team, my competitive. I'm going to stick this ball up your ass. That's what it was. And instead of crumbling like a lot of guys do, I wish I had a quarter for every kid that came through that bullpen with electric shit that couldn't transition it from the bullpen to the mound. Driving range to the first tee. different animal.
Yep.
Wow. And it was a process. And when the perspective that I had and had to come up with, I had to think this through. It didn't just happen. I'm either going to be home doing something else or I'm going to figure this out. How I'm going to figure this pressure shit out. Right?
Love it. So part of it is, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's relieving the pressure, potentially in that situation. It's a high pressure situation anyway. The fans are there. And then getting out of your head by saying, why am I doing this? This is for fun. Chill the hell out. You got this thing. Be a kid again. Just go. Just dance. Just make it happen. Because if you think about it, the most brave people in the world are kids. They'll dance in front of everybody. They'll tell jokes. They'll be silly in front of everybody. And then the negativity sets in and say, Timmy, stop that. You're embarrassing me. Or Timmy, stop dancing. You look like a fool. And all this negativity starts setting in. And then they start being that inner child. So is part of your strategy going back to that child and say, I'm not going to take myself so seriously. I'm playing a freaking game of baseball. I'm doing this for fun. Let's go. Is that a big part of it?
Oh, that is absolutely the perspective that I had. And it was amazing. It was an amazing process to handle the pressure. I see that's part of what helped Johnny Sane. All these guys helped me through those pressure situations. They'd been there, done that. How are these coaches in the big leagues today? They've never coached. They've never played in the big leagues.
Sure.
How the hell are you going to tell somebody to handle 50,000 goddamn people when you've never done it? It's crazy. That game in Boston, if I don't have those 6 years under my belt before I signed with the Yankees, I would have never survived that. But that perspective of how you keep it innocent.
Beautiful. The other thing I was going to ask you is there's a law out there called Hick's Law. And that law, it's a psychological, business law, sports law, etc., that states the more things you focus on, the slower you react. So obviously when you're on the mound, if you're thinking about, your family back home, your bills that you have to pay, if your bank account is full or empty, if your contract's going to get extended, if it's going to get renewed the way you want it to be renewed, so forth and so on. So Goose, what did you do to make sure that you practice Hick's Law, meaning you shut down everything around you and you just focused on that one pitch? Because you're a Hall of Famer. There's no way you did this without practicing Hick's Law at a really high level. So how did you take all the stuff, all the nonsense, and just focus on what you had to focus on? How did you do that? Because this will correlate as a dad, as a
absolutely.
husband, as a business owner, as a CEO, et cetera. So at a high level, how did you do that?
When I started to compartmentalize and started to focus on control, it goes back to everything in your whole life. The beautiful thing about baseball is baseball parallels life in every way. It's a game of failure. Life is too.
Sure. How
How we deal with failure. And when I started to what can I control? The only thing that I can control right now is what? One pitch. This goddamn pitch right here. That's all. I can't control anything after I let go of this goddamn thing. So now I'm worried about all the shit that can happen after I let go of this goddamn baseball. But I'm not focused on what the hell's going to happen with this one pitch. I'm worried all my energy's going to all the shit that I can't control after I let go of this pitch. When I figured that out, there's a lot to figure out, as I said. This is part of it. Figure it out. When I let go of this goddamn pitch, I'm My shit is thinking about the 10 million things that can go wrong after I let go of this goddamn pitch. What? What are you doing? What can you control? This pitch right here. All I can do is throw this goddamn pitch where I want to, and all of my energy and all of my focus and everything is right here, right now. Wow. Started to go up, man.
Love it, love it.
Started to go skyrocket, Jack. But it was a process. It was 5-6 years of experience, and you never. I thought after I get, after I get a few years in the big leagues, I didn't even know how many. I said, I'm going to have all the confidence in the world. It's the single most fragile goddamn thing that we have is our confidence. Night in and night out, going in, day in and day out, night in and night out, inning after inning. Every time I went out there, I was pumped. I said, these butterflies are going to go away. That's what we. I heard it when I started to think about controlling adrenaline. I was afraid of it. I was scared to death of it. I'd never felt this kind of adrenaline in front of 50,000 people and that process of the big leagues. Oh my God. It'll either crush you or you either figure it out or it will crush you. Absolutely. As I get back to my point of, I wish I had a quarter for every kid that left that bullpen with electric shit and could not transition it ever between the lines, what we call going between the lines.
Could you tell when there was a newcomer coming on board? Could you tell this guy's going to make it, this guy's not going to make it?
No, because you either figured, you don't classify him as that, but he's not doing it. But you got to figure it out. You'd have that talk with these kids. You could have this talk. That adrenaline thing, we're afraid of it. So much adrenaline to 50,000 people in it, walking into a bases loaded, nobody out situation, relieving the starter. I did it.
Did it ever get easier?
No. And that confidence was always the most single fragile thing. Adrenaline. Once I accepted adrenaline as my friend and stopped fighting it, I said after 10 years, this is going to go away. I'm going to be calm as a cucumber. That never goes away. That adrenaline, that rush never goes away. It's incredible. And I said, I either figure this out or I either figure this adrenaline shit out and once I accepted it and stopped fighting, that's when my career started going up and compartmentalizing, thinking about all I can control is this pitch. I can't control all the shit that's going to happen after I let go of this
controllables. I love it. Do you watch the game of baseball today?
No, very little. I watch the playoffs. I watch the World Series. Those are the two best teams. All the other shit, base running is atrocious. All the fundamentals are out the window. The things that made us, hey, baseball is a very simple game. It's very complex, but it's very simple. It's the same fundamentals that we learned when we were 8 years old that we practice when we go to spring training. Big leaguers practice when they go to spring training. The game doesn't change. They have changed it to the point of I don't even recognize it. They're ruining these kids. I'll tell you what throwing hard is. Throwing hard's like a long drive. It don't mean shit, okay? In the big picture of all the things that go with baseball and golf. Same thing. Throwing hard, that's all it is. Throw hard, and then they break down. No wind-ups. Oh, my God. I call them piece of shit wind-ups. Wind up and throw the goddamn thing. Get your body involved. Get the big lats, things that keep you away from injury. Now, everybody, you can't play in the big leagues without Tommy John surgery. Bunch of shit. Bunch of assholes running the game. That's what's wrong with it.
Love it. Okay, so this has been phenomenal. 10 out of 10. Thanks for being so present. Thanks for being so passionate, energetic. Thanks for everything that did for the game and just everything. Just everything. And I remember watching you all the time growing up, so it's really cool for me to have this interaction with you in this interview. Last question. For people that are dealing with a big problem either in their business, something on the home front, whatever, you've dealt with failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. last piece of advice of how to just compartmentalize that fade or whatever it is, however thick it feels or seems, best advice you can give us to just move forward and move on.
Baseball and life, it's a marathon, and how we handle failure. Baseball was this simple, and I believe it's life too. Our attitude is everything. Every time I took that mound thinking bad things, guess what? Bad shit happened. Life is like baseball. We think good things and good things happen. We think bad things and bad things happen. So our attitude, if I wake up the next day after shitting the bed, and I did, I had to get those disasters figured out. You almost got to play like you're 8 years old and you don't care. Wow, find that. That's where you got to find it, where you really don't care. You can't care because that's what destroys you. We're our own worst enemy out there.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever you tune into, that's what you turn into. Don't carry that baggage forward. Just focus on what's at hand and let it be. Move on. Keep it simple.
Learn from the bad, build on the good, and let it go.
There we go. That's the show. That's a wrap. Thank you.